Now, today's Cricket World Cup semi-final will see the Proteas taking on Australia at Eden Gardens out in Kolkata. To talk to us about this morning, we've roped in a man who has worn many hats in the game of cricket, from former player to national selector to currently commentating and analysing the game for SABC Sport. Good morning, Hussein Manack. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Vaseeva. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And I love that you're wearing the green and supporting the Proteas. Yes, certainly supporting the Proteas this morning. Hussein, let's just start and talk about the form of these two teams, because you look at what the Proteas have done so far in this World Cup, only losing 2 of their encounters. And Australia, they seem to be a team that just managed to peak at the right time. Who would you say is going to this clash as the favourites?
Okay, I mean, that's a very interesting question because, as we know, the Proteas are in fantastic form. They've had a wonderful World Cup. Yes, they've lost a couple of games, but their form, particularly when they batted first, they've been unstoppable, unbelievable. Their victories have been by big margins, so they really dominated opposition. Australia, at the same time, didn't start this World Cup very well. And remember, they even lost to South Africa in South Africa just before the World Cup. There was a 5-match series, and South Africa won the last 3 of those encounters, and then South Africa beat them the beginning of this World Cup. That was in Lucknow. Also convincing victory. So South Africa seemed to have the edge over Australia. And even in the last 18 matches against these two teams, South Africa won 15. So South Africa have dominated Australia in ODIs overall, and even in the recent past. But you know, a World Cup, a knockout game is a different story. It's a different kettle of fish. You almost have to forget every single thing that happened in the past, and it's all about this particular encounter. And Australia have a great record in World Cups particularly. They are world champions going back. They've won a number of World Cups. And when it comes to knockout games, they seem to have a way of just peaking, as you say, correct, peaking at the right time. So they seem to be on a nice upward curve, although they almost lost against Afghanistan. Let's not forget that.
They did almost lose against Afghanistan. Let's talk to the weather, because a lot of talk around the weather and how it could play a pivotal role in the outcome of today's match. In a shortened version of the game, which way do you see it going, and who do you think has the edge?
So first, I think there is some rain predicted. They're talking about rain predicted in Kolkata over the 2 days. So that's today as well as the reserve day, which is tomorrow. If that does happen, South Africa have a better net run rate over Australia. So if it does so happen, which you kind of doubt, but if it does happen where both days are washed out, South Africa will go through to the final. So that's the first thing. Secondly, if they do play, then you need a minimum of 20 overs on each side in order to get a game. So once the second team is batted for 20 overs, then of course you move into a situation where there's a result. If the game gets stopped along the way somewhere, then there's a new DLS par score which gets calculated. And then and South Africa have a little bit of a history about that in past World Cups. So then it's anybody's game. You know, they say it's better to bat second because you know what your target is when it comes to that.
But so with South Africa and us chasing so far in this World Cup.
So that becomes the tricky part. So when it rains and they say there's a bit of rain around, sometimes it's better to bat second because you know what you're chasing. But South Africa would prefer batting first because that's their strength, right? So that's where I suppose it becomes a little bit tricky. And in the shortened version of the game, the gaps between the two teams, which there isn't, the gaps tend to narrow, and it becomes a bit of a lottery sometimes. Just depends where you are at that particular moment in time. If you happen to lose wickets just before it rained, for example, you know, your par score goes down, and so it works against you. So, yeah, it becomes a bit of a lottery, I'm afraid, when it gets to a shortened version of the game.
All right, well, let's hope that we can actually just rather not play at all and go through if it's rained out. But let's talk about the captain, Temba Bavuma, because I feel like this is an issue that's been going around and around and around during this World Cup, and a lot of people saying that he's under a lot of pressure, that perhaps he shouldn't be in the squad coming into the semi-final, and that Ariza Hendricks should rather step into his shoes. But you look at other World Cup captains, and you look at, for example, when we go back to the 1999 World Cup, Hansi Cronje had an average of roughly 12 runs per encounter, and we take it to 2011, Graham Smith, an average of 26 runs. And you look at what Temba's been doing now, way above that, and when you look at his ODI stats, they're also better than Ariza Hendricks. So what do you make of those that just keep on saying Temba's not in form, he shouldn't be playing in this World Cup with this team?
Yeah, it does surprise me to hear some of the comments. I think, when you look at this past calendar year, Temba has been South Africa's best ODI player leading into the World Cup. So he's led from the front. And as a captain, I've personally been very impressed with his captaincy. I thought he's been very astute, his bowling changes. And he's a smart captain, he understands the game deeply, he reads the game well. So I've been pretty impressed. I think it's important when you come into a big tournament like this that you have a captain who's leading from the front, who has the respect of the players. And I think he does. He has the respect of the players back him, they're behind him. He's supported a lot of players through different issues as they've come over the last year. So I think he's got the players behind him. But on a purely batting side, I don't think there's any particular reason to drop Temba. I'm very surprised to hear some of these comments coming through. In the 50-over format, he's been, as I said earlier, our best ODI batter this year, leading into the World Cup. In the World Cup itself, he hasn't been scored as many runs as he would have liked or we would have liked. But I don't think, for me, that's an issue. I think players have ups and downs. And, whether he comes good or not, I don't think is an issue. I think you need to pick your best team. And Temba's part of the best 11 for me. And that's where it should really end.
And you really do also mention the fact that when it comes to him captaining the side and him making those crucial decisions during the game and those changes, the decisions he makes have worked for us throughout this whole World Cup.
Correct. And I don't think it's also in anybody's interest to be changing a captain in the middle of a World Cup, particularly when you get right to the real crux of the tournament, where you come to the knockout, because that becomes disruptive. Yes, he did miss 1 or 2 games earlier because he wasn't well and he had a tummy bug or whatever. And I think there was also a family issue where he had to come back home, come back. But I think they're reasonably settled now. He had a little bit of an injury. I thought in the previous game they played, he had an injury and he came out to bat with an injury. So, and I think that played a big part in South Africa winning that game because he needed to, they put on about 67 for the opening partnership. He batted with the injury. So that was showed a lot of, for me, leading from the front, a bit of courage and character leading from the, and I think Temba's got that, His domestic record's been good as well. So I have no issue with him playing. I think, I don't know, some of the comments just do surprise me sometimes.
Yeah, they surprise me too as well. Well, Hussein, thank you so much for your time this morning and we look forward to seeing you out on S3, bringing us the game.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me.
Hussein Manack, of course, part of the SABC Sport team that will be bringing you this semi-final clash between the Proteas as well as Australia. And we're hoping there will be no repeats of 1999.